Peace, everybody. My name is Willie Green, producer, engineer from Brooklyn, New York. We're here in my studio at the Greenhouse with Produce Like a Pro with 5 tips to get your low end right in your mix. Tip number 1, filter out everybody who doesn't belong. There's a lot of sounds that have a lot of extra low frequency content that you don't necessarily need. There's nothing under 100 hertz for those hi-hats. It's not helping you. And that kind of thing, clear it all out. If you're working with a sample, that sample came from vinyl, there's probably some rumble, there's probably some random low frequency, even subsonic information down there. That's not just clouding up your mix that could be used for kick drums and basses. It's also going to be triggering your compressors with this unwanted energy that we don't need in the mix at all. So let's go ahead and clear that out of there. Today we're looking at Mescalito from the group Shrapnel, made up of Prem Rock and Curly Castro. This song is on their album Metal Lung, released by Backwood Studios this year in 2022. We've got a big sample that's a big primary part of this beat. And we've got bass and we've got a huge kick drum and a drum break going on there. We got to make some room for what we need down there. And while we got this big sample, it's mostly high frequency focused, but it did come from vinyl. So we are going to just use a simple high pass filter. Right here, we're using Eventide Split EQ. And we're just going to roll that up. If I take this off, you're going to see all the energy that's down in the bottom end of this sample that we really don't need for our mix.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous, hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man.
All this stuff that you see down here below 50 hertz, it's a saxophone sample essentially. We don't need all that 50 hertz. And meanwhile, our bass and our kicks are not blooming the way that we want them to. We throw our filter on here, we throw our high pass on. Now our bass is gonna have room to stretch out and live where it wants to.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous, hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand, hourglass broke so we can slip Sudan, black Northern rad with the power cosmic in his hand, but cursing hammers got us a lot of dog.
Right, it just takes that much to make space for everybody. There's limited space in a mix. So we want to be able to dole that space out to who really needs it. And in the low end, this is very critical. So save some space for who really needs it, and your drums are going to bang that much more, and your bass is going to bloom that much more. All right, tip number 2. Sidechain your bass with your kick drum to get them both working together. Your kick and your bass really have to mesh. That's what gets a very solid, focused low end. But if you've got a big bass and a big kick, how do you get them to blend? What I do is I'll use a multi-band compressor and I will trigger the compression just from the kick drum, triggering the bass, but only the lowest frequencies. I want the definition and the detail in the bass to stay there, but take down those super sub frequencies just enough so the kick can take that frequency range when it needs to. And when the kick is not in, the bass gets to fill it up. So we'll play here, and this is the bass track on this song, Mescalito, and the kick is just gonna bring down the bottom end of the bass just enough for it to breathe, and then it goes away and lets the bass regain that area.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous, hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand, hourglass broke so we can slip Sudan, black Northern rad with the power cosmic in his.
So you want a kind of fast attack, so when the transient of the kick hits, the compressor will duck that region immediately. We want to get it right out of the way. And then a pretty quick, natural sounding, but quick release time so there's not a gap between the kick hit and the bass coming back to fill in that space. So the bass gets out of the way for just that second, way down at the bottom, so the meat of that kick can hit. And then it comes back in to keep a full, natural, consistent low end across your whole record. So if you're digging these tips so far, over at Pro Mix Academy, we have a full breakdown of this entire record, from drums to bass to vocals to samples, everything we break down. And you can also get the multi-tracks. You can try these tips and then your own moves on your own with this entire session, the beat from Steel Tip Dove, the raps from Curly Castro, Prem Rock, and Billy Woods, all right there. You can bring it home with you and try some of this stuff out. So head over to Pro Mix Academy, sign up, download the multis, and let's get busy. Let's get mixing. All right, tip number 3, saturate, saturate, saturate. I'm known for loving distortion, and it's not just because I'm angry and crunchy, although sometimes I am, but sometimes saturation is a great tool to get things to translate to any kind of speaker, and those things specifically your low end. That's what we're talking about. No matter how much time we spend working on our mixes and listening on wonderful monitoring systems and testing the mix everywhere to make sure that it's banging properly, at the end of the day, a lot of people are still going to listen on earbuds or on their cell phone speaker, and that's just the way of life. So how do we get that huge bottom we worked so hard on to translate on these bass challenge systems? Saturation. So we'll take a look at this bass here from Mescalito, and I don't want to saturate to the point where we're fuzzing out the bass. This is not that kind of record. This is kind of a smooth one. We don't want to fuzz it too much, but I want to add just enough harmonics so that if you're listening on your phone or on a laptop speaker, we still hear the texture of the bass, and those upper harmonics are going to inform our ear where the fundamental of the bass is, where that super low is. So even if you've got that super low sub bass that rattles the trunk, we also want that to translate and speak out on much smaller speakers. A little bit of saturation is going to help you out with that. Let's check it out.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous. Hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand.
I'm going to increase the drive here in our soft tube console 1 window. On the right side, we see the drive, and I'm going to increase the bass, and we'll start to see how that starts to jump out of even the smallest speakers.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous. Hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand.
We drive it, and we don't want to crunch it. We don't want to go too much, but just enough to get a little more definition out of that bass, so when we inevitably are listening back just out of our phone, we still get the definition, we still know the bass is there. Low end is critical to music of all genres, but especially on a hip-hop track like this, it's gotta bang, and it's gotta bang everywhere, earbuds included. So go ahead, drive that bass a little bit, crank it up until we're really speaking out everywhere, and then you're gonna be in great shape. Tip number 4, mono is your friend. In a world where things are getting more and more spacious, we have wide stereo mixes, everything's going immersive now, we want more and more space. Mono is still important. Mono focuses things, and especially for low end, it gives more impact, it gives more bang. And so when you're looking at your low end and you're thinking this just doesn't feel as solid as I need it to, lower the stereo width of your low frequency instruments, and as they come more into focus, it's gonna bang and bang that much further. So let's look at the drum break. We got a break beat in the song. If you watch the bottom left corner of our console 1 window, I'm gonna start to narrow the low frequencies, and the kick is gonna start to punch and punch more and more.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous. Hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand. Hourglass broke so we can sniff Sudan. Black northern rad with the power cosmic in his hand, but cursed hammers got us a lot of dark, and it's a cursed land. Crack the time capsule where I bury all my mestical.
As we bring those low frequencies in together, they just start to really have more impact. It's nice and cool to have things wide, but remember, if everything is wide, nothing feels wide because there's no strong center image to let us know how wide the sides really are. Have a strong center image, your beats are gonna knock even more, and you're gonna feel more spacious because this wide stuff can just be what it is with the focus still in the center. And tip number 5, filter your side chains on your compressors to allow for bass to speak through and have more impact. A lot of modern compressors now have a sidechain filter, which allows you to remove low frequencies from the trigger from your compressor. The sidechain is what is telling your compressor to compress, and it's generally the input. But maybe we don't want the super bottom, the big bottom of your track to cause your compressor to squish down every time that kick drum hits. Here we're dealing with the SPL Iron, brought to us by Plugin Alliance. And down here at the bottom, we have it's a high pass sidechain filter. And as I start to raise this, it's gonna take all the low end, anything that's below that filter frequency, and it's gonna remove it from triggering the compressor, which means our low end is gonna be able to bloom more, and our compressor is just gonna grab onto things above that filter frequency. I'm gonna roll this all the way down and we're gonna just slowly ease it up.
To the clue, you can call me fabulous. Hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man. Sifting sand, hourglass broke so we can sniff Sudan. Black Northern rad.
As we bring that up, as we bring the sidechain filter up, that big bottom that we worked so hard on putting together is not going to trigger the compressor, and therefore it's going to maintain its size. It's going to be just as big as we're trying to get. We need that big bottom, we need that impact, we need that bang. So there's 5 tips for how to get your low end right in your mix. If you want even more tips, more insight into my mixing process, into Shrapnel, into Steel Tip Dove's production, head on over to Pro Mix Academy. Check out the full series. We dive into every aspect of the mix, from the special effects, from the sauce, to the drums, to the vocals, to the sample processing, and everything. Head on over there, download the files, try these tips, try your own moves, hit me up. My name is Willie Green. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you do with these tracks. I'm curious to hear how you mix and how you approach a record like Mescalito. My name is Willie Green, and that's what I know. Peace.